All right, welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. I appreciate everybody tuning in, listening, and watching. And today I have yet another tower who I've always admired for a long time. I've got Tim Ward from Safari Towing. How you
Thank
doing,
you.
Tim?
Thank you, sir. And again, I turn that back at you. Admire you because we've had a online relationship for what, over 10 years?
Oh yeah, maybe 15. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe 15 years. We've had some good conversations,
yeah,
some not so good
right,
conversations. We've
right.
had some heated discussions,
Yeah,
arguments, or whatnot.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're always able to what? Communicate.
That's right. That's right. And part of the benefit of our relationship has been we are from two completely different states, both from an ideological perspective in some cases and political, but also
Yeah.
in the way that the towing industry is expected to operate, right? There are plenty of differences.
Hmm.
So I did want to kind of start because obviously you and I know each other, but people tuned in may not know me or may not know you. And I was wondering if you could kind of tell me a little bit about yourself and safari towing, where you are at and like what type of towing do you do? I always like to get that. And I'm
Okay. Get
thankful
that
to have
knocked
you
out.
on, so tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, Tim Ward with Safari Towing. We're in McKinney, Texas. I've been in the towing industry for 24 years now, approximately. We've been here in McKinney, Texas for about 14 years. Originally started in South Florida. We migrated here because of the economy, schools, politics, all the above. And right now, we've evolved into a majority of probably 85% private property impounds, and the
Okay.
rest is customer base, privates, shops, accounts. We have hundreds of private property accounts, probably over 900, and we probably have another 300 shop accounts. But over the past few years, like I said, we evolved. We've raised our rates to meet the crazy economy, inflation, and all the above that's going on with us.
Right.
So I come from a construction background. I had a construction company before this.
Okay.
I'm a diver, saltwater, freshwater diver. So
Nice.
I've done that from where we started the company down in South Florida. You don't have ditches, you have canals.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff we got was in the water. But anyway,
Nice.
back to today, we're running self loaders, and I'm dressed right now. We were just doing a heavy duty impound, so I subcontract that out.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Nice. Yeah. I'm familiar with that too. Yeah.
yeah.
To a lot of towers out there that are listening, I think people in our industry probably need to come to terms with the fact that, it's like not all of us can do every single thing, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes if it's something infrequent, it's a lot better for us from a business perspective and a customer service perspective to sub that out. And yeah, I have that need. Some of the viewers and listeners know I also exclusively do private property towing, similar to you. And so
Hmm.
oftentimes, it's kind of cool because when you and I talk, we speak the same language because we're in the same sort of sector of towing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's obviously a lot easier to share struggles with you. And one of the things, Tim, I to get to my next point is I obviously we follow each other on social media. So some of the things that I see you and that are involved with piques my interest. And I wanted to see if you could talk about that a little bit. It seems that you're heavily involved with training in your
Yes.
area and your state of Texas. I was wondering, kind of like what your involvement is. Are you an instructor? Is it happening at the local level, the state level? Is the towing association involved? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, one thing I learned with business is I always want to be involved with the association or the people involved with the decision making, the legislature and stuff. So I joined Southwest Tow Operators 14, probably 15 years ago, and became a basic member. And then over the years, I get the call, hey, legislature, everything we do with private property impound or towing, the government wants to get involved in. So I've learned that I want to affect things in a positive way. Our industry already faces what? Terrible representation,
Right.
terrible public opinion of us. They look down on us. They it just the knowledge of our industry is limited.
Yeah.
So I got involved with Southwest Tow Operators, which is the number one tow association in Texas. And over the years, the past 6 years, I have been a trainer with them. So I do the state required 4 and 8 hour certification course for TDLR. That's Texas Department License and Regulation.
Okay.
So, plus we also do heavy duty training. We do rollover, uprating. Last month we had a heavy duty training class, 2-day course in Burleson, where we had a tanker and a cement barrel that we trained. I think about 30 something guys were training on that for 2 days. So to properly train and educate people is very, very important.
Right.
That's where I feel our industry is lacking, is in our training and our customer service and our just advancement through technology. So I want to be part of it. So this past year, I got nominated onto the board with Southwest Tow Operators, and we've been very active legislatively. We're pushing for better tow regulations, fighting all the terrible tow legislation that's out there. There's so many bad bills in the legislative house that it's terrible to see what these people don't even understand with our industry. And trying to get the general population to understand is impossible. But the only thing we can affect is our local politics and then our state politics. So
Right.
that's why I became a member and a board member here. And I emphasize training is everybody needs training.
Yeah.
I'm sure I walk into a training class and one of my first conversations is, all right, so who's ever been to a training class? 99% of everybody raises their hand and says no.
Right.
They've never been involved in training. Most people walk into a tow company and they do what? They check insurance. They ask them if they got a drug test and they can pass a drug test, driver's license. They got a heartbeat, and then they might have what? A day in a truck, 2 days in a truck, and then they're put to work. So
Which is terrifying.
which is terrifying.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because of
Now,
all the
granted,
different things they could run into, right?
yes. Well, granted, that's not a lot of it, but it's the majority of our industry. We're so stressed. A lot of guys are just thrown into trucks, and a lot of guys say they know stuff, and they don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of posers out there,
Yeah.
fakers that pretend they know. I've had people go, "I'm an over the road trucker." Nothing against over the road truckers, but that's not towing.
Sure, that doesn't qualify you. Yeah. Yeah, let
It
me
doesn't
ask a
qualify you.
follow-up to that, Tim. For towers that are in Texas, and I'm going to assume that the training is accepted statewide, right? The type of training you're
Yes.
engaged in. But
Yes.
but for those towers that, let's say, serve law enforcement agencies, is the training you are involved in a mandate to service law enforcement agencies? In other words, whether it's the state troopers in Texas or the sheriff or the local police, are they saying, hey, you have to have this training to tow for us generally?
Okay. The state of Texas has required licensing. So there's licensing you have to get from the state of Texas, a tow license.
Got it.
So yes, there's 3 different licenses here in Texas. There's consent tow, which is CT. There's PP, which is private property tow, and there's incident management. Consent tow is you can only do consent towing.
Yeah.
Private property is you can only do private property, let's say, and then incident management you can do everything.
Got
So
it.
most tow operators, like for the municipalities and stuff, the companies are incident management companies. So they do everything,
Got
which
it.
then incident management allows you to be versed in the non-consent tow rules and regulations,
Right.
and that all apply to that. So yes, it's mandatory. Now, a lot of companies, different municipalities have grown over the past few years, and a lot of the tow companies, the larger tow companies, have incorporated cross training. A few of our board members that are with Southwest Tow Operators have large tow companies, dozens and dozens and dozens of trucks, light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, whatnot, and they do a lot of cross training. And I've been fortunate enough to be active with them to do the cross training. And I love sharing the knowledge and I love learning, because being in this industry 24 years, guess what? I still learn all the time. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, no, I
So,
mean, regardless of how long you do it, you do definitely from time to time pick up new things. Another follow-up, Tim, regarding this organization you brought up, is it Southeast Tow Operators? Is that the name of it?
Southwest,
I'm sorry, Southwest Tow Operators.
close
Does
start.
does this organization, sorry, Tim, does this organization help the towing industry at the state level in terms of, like you
Yes,
mentioned, when there's
yes,
legislation, does Southwest Tow
yes,
Operators come in and say, hey, we are going to help with lobbying efforts. We are going to, help make sure that this legislation that's proposed for the towing industry either gets implemented correctly or gets some updates concerning like new stuff that comes into our industry. And, sometimes you and I have both seen this legislation,
mhm,
doesn't work anymore because of some emerging technology that's come about. Let's say, for example,
exactly.
there was a law that said, well, you got to have a paper invoice. Well, shoot,
Mhm.
nowadays, I mean, nobody really wants that to begin with. Most customers are accustomed to, either an email or a digital invoice, and most
Instant
people,
message. Yep.
yeah, instant message, text, what have you. So that's good to hear. To tack on to what you were talking about, I think that regardless of what state you are in, it's going to be important for organizations centered around our industry in those respective states to be involved with legislative stuff. I mean, you can't sort of not be involved and then complain about stuff that gets passed when you actually have a dog in that fight. And you need to make sure that as a tower, you're doing your part to be either a member of these associations, be contributing, etc. Obviously, it takes money to affect change. And so for whoever's out there listening, it's easy to be discouraged by legislation and by organizations, but if you don't get involved, it's kind of tough to complain about it after the fact. So I'm glad
Exactly.
I'm glad to hear that, Tim. That kind of
Yes.
leads me to my next sort of thing that I wanted to discuss. And obviously, you and I have spoken about this a lot, but I like to, on this podcast, have different towers from different areas because it leads me to this topic because I get different answers, right? And so I'm wondering, in the last 5 or 10 years, you and I have had probably half a dozen conversations about emerging technologies, without obviously giving up trade secrets. I was wondering, how do you use technology like differently now than maybe you did 10 years ago? And how does that like, do you feel like it's been a benefit to you? How does that help
Mhm.
you run your business?
Okay. Question: what is a trade secret in the towing industry? Do
Well,
you have a secret? Do you have a secret sauce? Because
right,
really,
right. Well, I
really,
do, and nobody's getting the recipe, but
well, listen, we all
but
think we do,
of course,
but it's basic. We all have a need. There's a public need that needs to be serviced.
right,
Okay, we want to streamline it and we want to make it easy and as efficient as possible to
right,
handle the calls that come in, the different situations that come in. That's one of the things I love with our tow industry because my dispatch, she texts me multiple times a day. Hey, I've never done this one before. The guy wants to move a helicopter. Can we do it? Yes. No. I need specs. I need this. I need that. Oh, it's a little helicopter. Okay. Oh, I
right,
got a customer with a construction piece of equipment abandoned on their property. Can we impound it? Yes. My answer is always yes. We can do it. Let me go check it out and bring it in. Now, with the technology, we always want better technology to be what? In the private property industry, I wanted more technology to make us more accountable and more transparent, which
right,
these different apps do with
yeah,
documentation of pictures, timestamps, geofence, GPS locations, all the above, chain of calls. Our dispatch log shows that the call came in at 9 a.m. The call was dispatched at 9:12. The call was received by the driver at 9:35. Driver arrived at 10:05. Car was loaded by 10:10. Car was at the impound by 10:30.
right,
Everything is a chain of custody, verification, and then it goes into billing. Towing to me is easy. It comes easy. The hard part is what? Collecting the money. you
Yep.
know, how to bill out things properly, how to get a VIN number, how to get a license plate, how to get mileage. All these apps and technologies help us. You know, with AI today, in our app, we could take a picture of a car and the app's already trying to figure out what kind of car it is.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know, that's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We walk up and we scan the VIN number with our phone, and it's already inputting into the app, and it's already using another app to find out who the registered owner. You
Right.
know,
Right.
all the VIN, all the legal ease of it. You know,
Yeah.
so technology is very, very important for us. You
Yeah.
know, plus everybody, every corporation, every product there is has an app. You
Absolutely.
know,
Absolutely. Yeah. And
so
it definitely does, you know, for some people who are not accustomed to sort of, I'll call it doing business with your iPhone kind of thing, right?
mhm.
It is, there is a little bit of challenge in the beginning to kind of get used to it, but you know, it's funny. I'll share with you this little secret. The engineering team at Tow Club watches this podcast, and oftentimes, you know, when I have a guest, I purposely, and this, I'm going to be completely honest, this may or may not irritate them oftentimes, but I purposely ask a question, it was such as one I'm going to ask you now, but like about an emerging technology, because I usually like nudge them. I'm like, hey, this new thing came out. Like, let's do this. You know, what are you guys waiting for? Stop being lazy. And one of the engineers
Mhm.
is like laser eyes on me right now. He's over there in the corner. But I mean, my point is, and I'll get to this rather long-winded question, but how do
No
you feel
problem.
about LPR technology, and have you encountered LPR technology in some of the different platforms that you use, and how is it doing for you? You know, like,
Yes.
you know, because
Yes.
it saves the driver a lot of time, right? It recognizes, and for those of you who are listening who don't know what I'm talking about, many apps on the marketplace now can actually take a picture of a license plate and decode the VIN, among other things, give vehicle information. So this, what this does is it reduces the amount of manual typing for tow drivers when they're filling out a ticket. This technology in recent years has gotten very, very inexpensive. It used to be exclusively used in law enforcement and repossession, and now it's
Yes.
making its way into different towing apps, such as you know, the different towing software applications that are out there. But I'll leave it to you, Tim. Have you experienced the LPR stuff as of yet?
Yes. 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 We use it every day and every night.
Okay.
License plate reader, LPR, license plate reader,
Yeah.
basic. Okay. We did have before COVID, we had a repossession company. When COVID hit, guess what? Shut it down. We
Right.
reorganized, readjusted, and overcame. All
Okay.
right. We had to go through a transition. Technology helps with everything. All
Right.
right. When we transitioned to private property impounds, we had to do what? We had to adjust to patrolling in Texas. We're allowed to patrol tow. All
Right.
right. So we set up our system to be very attentive to every private property. So every property has its rules and that it wants to follow.
Right.
So we did that, and the LPR helps us out where the driver can become more efficient and go through a property where normally he might have to get out and walk it
Right.
and scan every vehicle. Uh, you know, personally with a flashlight and look up at the license plate or look at the permit. Now we use the license plate. The license
Got it.
plate is technically your permit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me
So
get pulled over here.
it's another potential application for LPR, right? Is kind of like using it for parking enforcement as opposed to just
Yes.
repossessions, or like the cops using it to find out if a car is stolen or whatever. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good use. I did want to ask, because this was actually a topic of discussion with engineers recently. I'd like to, well, we as a group were discussing the possibilities here, but are you using mobile credit card terminals? Like, are you using that with your drivers? Let's say you guys do a retail call, and you know the person wants to pay with a credit card. Are your drivers equipped with the ability to charge that person? I'm just out of curiosity.
Yes, and we use every aspect, every way you can accept the payment, we do it.
Okay.
Okay, you name it, we can accept it. I will take cash, debit, credit card, except for certain ones, of course.
Yeah.
We all know the terrible ones, but crypto, I will take crypto. I'll take whatever. You know, uh,
Are you
and
accepting
and
Venmo, for example?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Venmo, Cash App, you name
Zelle.
it. Zelle. We do everything through the business through a couple different processors that we use that document it. We have a website that you can we text message everybody. So
Got it.
we also create a text thread, which all you guys out there who ever get chargebacks, when you create a text thread with a person's phone number, and then you say, hey, please send me your driver's license, a picture of your DL, and then we talk about their impounded car in a paragraph, and then we share with them the costs. And in Texas, we're allowed to charge the 4% credit card fee. Okay, so that gets passed along to whoever uses a credit card. So when we create a text thread, it has virtually eliminated all chargebacks.
Got it.
Or if we do get a chargeback, we then submit the text thread of, hey, there's a thread with the person's phone number, with a picture of their DL, with a conversation, with the vehicle information, with an agreement to pay, and a link that they went to through an app that they paid us. So it covers our everything we do pretty good, I think.
Right.
Our chargebacks have gone way down.
You know,
So
I'm really glad you brought that up, Tim, because when I talk to towers, either in this sort of format or privately, or I'll have a phone call, or I run into towers like I run into you all the time at the different tow shows and whatnot. We have
mhm.
conversations. Chargebacks are definitely a frequently brought up topic. I'm wondering for you, and this is of interest to me because you and I do similar work, right? I do private property towing, you do private property towing. I'm going to take a guess here, but I just wanted to ask to confirm that your chargeback rate for non-consensual tows, in other words, private property towing mostly, is probably more problematic for that type of towing. Am I right? Because they're angry,
Yes.
right? They're trying to weasel out of their car being towed, and
Well, okay, in the towing industry, no matter what you do, you're a hero or you're zero. So we go up and down all day long. So I can rescue people, tow people's cars to the mechanic shop, get them off the side of the highway, and an hour later, I'm impounding somebody's family member for improper parking, or
right, right,
being at the wrong place, wrong time. Going to the chargebacks and stuff, yes, it's problematic. The same conversation we can have with reviews.
right.
One upset person is going to tell 10 people that they
Yes,
hate us and that we did them wrong, even though we got what pictures of the violation, we got video documentation, we did everything possible. And even after we've given people a slight discount or something, they still will throw a 1-star review at us, or get 10 of their friends to give us 1-star reviews. Now
right.
the happy customer, we all know, does what? Says thank you and moves on.
Yeah, these guys are
Rarely ever,
brave, whatever. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, rarely ever go in and give us a 5-star review, even though they're happy we saved them. It's still a stressful time of day that they don't look at as a reward,
right.
or something that needs to be covered. Now there
No,
are a few good customers, but
yeah, no, I hear that. But I've always, because my personal experiences in running a towing business were, when I did a lot of consensual towing, the amount of chargebacks was very low. But
mhm,
now that I exclusively provide non-consensual towing, in my case, private property impound, the amount, I mean, I still don't have like a huge percentage of chargebacks, but certainly more so now than I did when it was exclusively consensual towing. So it's interesting to see the dynamic. It's like when you're helping people, they're less likely to, charge back. But when you've impounded their vehicle, they people like to escape accountability, right? So the chargebacks
mhm.
come from that. But that's good information there, Tim. It kind of brings me, to my next kind of thing that I wanted to discuss with you. And this is again something, I know this is kind of a recurring theme here, but you and I have talked about these things a lot. But, because you and I both follow the industry on social media, and just as you and I have had, hey man, Tim, I think this sucks, and you say, no, it doesn't suck, and and we go back and forth, or we agree. But we've also witnessed other people have the same conversations, and I have my own personal opinions on what's important and my own perspective. I'm sure you do too. Ours probably align more than they misalign. But like, what do you see what do you see that's in the absence of other people's conversations? In other words, what is important to our industry that's not being touched on? Like what is out there that you find very dangerous that a lot of people are like, oh no, like they don't talk about it. I have my own perspective on that.
Mm-hmm. uh, Training, knowledge of our industry. I couldn't tell you how many people I ask in a training course. I ask, "What is your truck rated at?" And they look at me and I'm like, "Do you know what your bed's rated at? Do you know what your truck? Do you know what you can carry?" Nobody, a lot of people have no clue. So training is a big thing. Educating yourself in your craft. You know, I want to learn about everything in our industry. I want to learn the rules and regulations. I wasn't really involved with the legislative part of it until a few years ago. And then I started getting involved with it because our Southwest tow operators is very active. We have our own lobbyist, and we're very active with pro towing bills, and we're very active with fighting terrible legislation against the tow industry, which there's tons. You have industries out there that are against us. The insurance industry is against us. The trucking industry is against us. So it's always
Very
a
much
battle.
so. Yeah, very much
But
so. I've observed those same things, Tim, and
mm-hmm.
this is one of the reasons why I've always thought more collaboration between the state towing
Yes,
associations probably would be a good thing. Um,
yes,
but
100%.
with that in mind, I've also seen the bickering between them, right? So,
Yes.
let's just, and this is not the case that I know of, but let's just say Nevada and California, they may have different towing associations, or another state. And, the California Towing Association, Tow Truck Association might say, hey, this is our stance on this particular hot button topic.
Mm-hmm.
But the one from, I don't know, Alabama may say, well, that's not a problem for us. We're worried about this thing. Um, but I still think at the end of the day, kind of like to your point, more collaboration would definitely be a plus benefit for the towing industry across the country. There's no doubt in my mind that if they work together a little bit more, maybe if there was like a federal tow association, I don't even
Yeah.
know if that's possible,
Well,
but
there is TRAA,
that's right.
but the issue is there's so many opinions out there, and we know that conversation. Okay, the biggest problem is getting everybody to meet and have a conversation. Texas Tow Association have been meeting with Oklahoma, having good conversations, and we've been fighting for the slow down, move over law. In Texas this past year, we got more teeth put into it. We got higher over $1,000 tickets now, and if you hurt one of us, it could be a crime. So we've passed more legislation to try and help the tow op or help the
Right.
laws have teeth. We're now sharing that knowledge and what we've done with Oklahoma because they
Got it.
want to do the same thing. And we hope, this is I know our tow association, I know our leadership, other people are very active with conversations.
Right.
But as everybody, most of us are what? Small business owners.
Yeah.
Most of us are busy, busy, busy. You know, how many tow shows a year do people get to go to? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
only reason I got to travel so much to different tow shows because I was involved with training. I was involved with building tow trucks and whatnot. I was involved in different aspects, and I positioned myself.
Right.
Most tow owners can't do that. It's finding the time. You
It
know.
is. Yeah, it's difficult. It definitely is. And there's lots of reasons for that. I was curious, a follow-up on that, regarding the lobbying and legislative efforts and the efforts on the Southwest tow operators to
Mm-hmm.
spread the message of slow down and move over. I wanted to ask, has there been enough data collected as of yet to determine, like, are these efforts reducing these instances of,
Uh,
getting hit?
there's only data for bad events. no one ever shares good events, okay?
It's true.
Or there is a couple databases for struck buys that we're trying to do for or near misses, near hits. You know, there are a couple organizations that do that, and I don't have that. I wanted to bring that data with me, but I jumped in the truck and had to run out and take care of business again. You know,
Yeah.
on
No,
the
no worries.
fly.
I was gonna say the reason why I asked is because when I've
Mm-hmm.
talked to other people about this, um, it seems to be that again, I don't know how far we can go back, but it seems to me that it's still less than it was prior to spreading a message. And if that's the case for all over the place, I would imagine the results would be similar. If that's the case, then people, and I hope people listening to this understand that getting involved and it does create something where you can actually witness the power of engagement. So if you look and
Mm-hmm.
say, for example, and I hate to even admit to this, but if you look and say, hey, 5 guys got hit last year, but we've been doing X, we've been doing Y, we've been doing Z, and now this year,
Mm-hmm.
3 guys got hit. Obviously, the goal is 0 guys, but if you
Yes, and
show a
I'm wearing the
reduction,
shirt too. I'm wearing
there
the
you
shirt.
go.
Toe
Yeah, there
toe
you
up
go.
down.
Yeah,
The
toe
goal
up
is
down.
zero.
So power of
Mm-hmm.
engagement for those of you listening, don't scoff at people getting involved. Don't scoff at people saying, hey, I want to turn 5 incidents into 3, or I want to turn 5 incidents into 0, but I may have to get to 3 first before I get to 0, right?
Yes.
So yeah,
Well,
and my next thing I wanted to discuss with you, Tim, thank you for that, by the way.
well. Hold on. All right. Listen, we're always running an uphill battle
Right.
because we got to deal with what dumb, distracted, drunk,
Yes.
drugged drivers. So they're all the D's. Okay, and we're dealing with more technology, more cars on the road than ever.
Yes.
There's never a time in history where there's less cars now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're dealing with evolving technologies. Please, people are watching TikToks as they drive down the road. You know, I'm
You're
sure
not
someone's
allowed.
going to
You
comment.
mean you're not allowed to do that?
No, exactly. I'm sure someone's going to
I'm just kidding.
comment, "Hey, Tim, you're driving while you're doing a Zoom meeting." You know, I'm like, "Yeah, you got me."
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. No, no, I hear you.
you,
I hear you.
you know.
I first of all, I agree with you, and in a future episode, we're trying to get a commitment from a discussion of somebody in the automotive industry that develops advanced driver assistance systems to talk
Mm-hmm,
about how that work is reducing the amount of accidents, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
for example, Tim, in my car, if I use the I'll give you an example. If I use, I don't want to call it autopilot, but it has something similar to what people know
Yes,
autopilot. But I think the technical term in the automotive industry is ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistant. If
yes.
I use that and I look away, so if I'm facing the front of the car like you are, and I look
Mm-hmm,
away, it will say, "Hey, man, get your eyes back on the road." Now,
yes.
now, granted, yes, I wish people had the discipline to organically not have to rely on a system like that. But I got to think that things like that do make things safer in the aggregate. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's the learning curve too. We have AI. We have cameras. Our insurance company requires us to have cameras in our tow trucks,
right, right,
and the cameras are AI equipped where they watch you. They know if you're looking away. They know if you're wearing your seatbelt. They know the speed
right.
of the truck. They know if you're hard braking. The technology that goes into the not stupid, silly camera system is
Right.
amazing. But
Yeah.
then you have the human factor kick in where drivers I've seen not with my company but another company, two drivers quit because they put the technology in the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if
why
you
would you
want
quit
those
you?
guys, right? Do you want
What's
those
that?
guys? I
No,
mean,
I don't want those
I don't
guys,
want those
but
guys either, right?
guess what? We have a labor shortage.
Yeah.
Okay, hiring qualified good operators is very difficult. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a search out there for always these good drivers, but people don't like being watched.
Yeah.
It's a difficult part of our industry that we're gonna have to come to grips with. And a lot of us, we add the cameras to our trucks later. You drive an EV, right? That comes. How many cameras are in your Tesla from the
Uh,
factory?
I think like 12 or something like that.
12. All right, let's say 10 or 12 cameras come from the factory. You
Yeah.
know, So you already subconsciously had to deal with that and
Yeah.
accept that and agree to that to drive that car. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
a lot of these tow trucks, guess what? We have to add them for
Yeah.
our insurance wants them.
Yeah.
And it's not one camera anymore; it's multiple cameras.
Yeah.
You know,
100%. So Tim, I did want to kind of throw a curveball at you here and ask you a question that is everybody's favorite question. And I say this because again, you and I have discussed this ad nauseum and we've
hmm
discussed it with other towers, but I wanted to know, I mean, obviously we've pulled out of this pandemic. Everybody is still, I would say, I'm going to describe this as limping from this pandemic. However, I'm curious, like, if you could just share kind of give me a brief story about since the pandemic and the recovery, like what has Safari had to do to help you pull out of it? Have you had to change much, and what measures like worked for you to kind of get through it, you know?
Okay. All right. Well, everything changed when the pandemic hit. We were a huge provider for the insurance industry, the motor clubs. We were doing everything. We had a repo division. We had this, that, we had approximately 18 trucks on the road any given day. Okay. And two or three trucks broken and getting repaired any given day. The virus hit. And guess what? We were doing at least 100 calls a day, and then we dropped down to 10 or less.
Wow. That
Yeah,
so 80,
yes,
90%.
yeah, at least some days we
Wow.
had no calls. Luckily, timing with drivers and people leaving and different situations, we had a bunch of lease returns, let's say, and we were able to downsize relatively quickly. We had a bunch of trucks that I still have a couple today that we're still running. I'm fixing a couple trucks that I put in hibernation that we used that we Frankenstein and we cannibalized for a
Right.
couple of years to fix the other trucks because parts shortage.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I was looking for valve bodies. I was looking for sensors and this and that. And I was like, well, we got two trucks over there on the side of the building. Let's take them. So
Right.
we sat down and we went over a lot of technology and a lot of numbers and numbers crunched. And when you actually look at the numbers and you have a professional accountant tell you, what are you doing? Your profit margin is 6-8%. Is
Yeah.
that doable? No, it's not doable. They're like, why do you do this as a hobby? And we are like, no, so you come to realization that you're doing a lot of stuff just to do stuff. And then we stopped, so we got rid of a lot of different parts of our business. We downsized tremendously. We found a niche that we wanted to focus on that made good profit that didn't stop. And private property impound came into play.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make it better, make it more transparent with all the apps and technology did. I don't know how a lot of these tow companies stay in business now because back in the day, we were making big buckets of money, but we were spending wheelbarrowfuls,
Right.
to make that bucket of money, that shovel full of money. I was dumping a wheelbarrow full of trucks and gas and fuel and drivers, commissions and insurance. And the prices today,
Yeah.
2017, well, we can buy a Ram 4500 with a self loader on the back for what, $82,000. Come with a set of dollies.
Right.
What's that price today? A buck 20,
Yeah.
120,000 with
Yes.
nothing, with
Right.
straps and maybe a wireless light bar.
There's a
You know,
that's a very good it's interesting, Tim. You're probably just this year. I mean, we're barely in February. I've talked to probably 5 towers in that span of time this year, kind of about this, and everybody's answer is relatively similar. And just a quick follow-up because well, I say similar because what I've realized in asking that question is that like it may have affected everyone a little differently, but everybody was affected is the bottom line. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is like, hey, I had to make certain decisions on fleet. I had to make certain, it changed the way I maybe looked at this. And because I know I'll just share my experience real quickly is I had to make these types of decisions. Like, hey man, like we're down, we were down roughly 60% for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to make certain decisions. Maybe I don't buy two new trucks this year, maybe I wait and I buy one next year. And, maybe, I don't keep the trucks till 180,000 miles before I sell them. Maybe I run them to 225,000.
Yeah.
Maybe, and not just
Mm-hmm.
for cost cutting, but also for like you mentioned, there's supply chain issues. So even if I
Mm-hmm.
made the decision to buy a truck, I was learning from the dealers, just like you brought up, that hey, dude, you might get it in a year, maybe. So you got 1 year's time to make a decision to buy a new truck to get it the next year, right? So that
Yes.
means that you got to
Yeah.
get better at sharpening your pencil and figuring out your accounting. And there's a lot of different decisions, and I think a lot of people were affected. So it's interesting though that you decided maybe to focus on higher profit margin work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yep.
that is
That
that, is that
and
fair to
and
say?
I have a problem. I fall in love with my trucks. Okay.
They're sentimental
I
to you, huh?
what's that?
They're sentimental to you.
Well, it's not just that. You get to know trucks, and once you work out all the kinks, you got a good built, dependable unit.
Right.
And when I turn around, a truck that we did all this extra work to, or updated, or upgraded, or got rid of all the issues, and now the truck's a good running truck, and you look at it and it's got 330,000 miles.
Right.
And some people cringe at that, and I'm like, but I've run out my certain trucks. I run them out to 4, 5, 600,000 miles, you
Right.
know, and I'm happy with that, and I wish I could run them all out. And then I got other guys, you and I've talked, and you flip yours at what, $180,
Yeah, we're
and I'm like,
a quarter. Let's call it a quarter million. Between
yeah,
175 and 250. I think
yeah, you
probably
know,
somewhere around 200,000 miles is probably the average.
listen, I'm in a Toyota Tundra right now with 309,000 miles on it. Okay, and I don't want to get rid of it. It's a
Right.
runner. It runs forever. We maintain our stuff. We do oil changes and top everything off. And when something breaks, we fix it with factory parts. And we take care of our stuff.
Yeah.
Now I got a old Toyota Tundra I'm running around with. I'm not worried about it. 308,000 miles. But I see these new companies. These guys go out and buy brand new Dodge Ram 2500s, 3500s just as pickup trucks as daily runners, and they're paying $1,500, $1,800 a month payment.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it. I
Well,
don't understand.
I think we've all sort of made bad auto purchases and decisions before, and sometimes it takes a while to realize, that you made
Mm-hmm.
one. But given what you told me about post-pandemic, I think you and I would probably agree that the pandemic made permanent changes as to how we do things, just because we were like, hey, I never want to experience this again, so I'm going to do this. So I'm going to
Yes.
I'm going to ask for you to discuss what you feel is, look into your crystal ball, like where do you see the industry in the next 5 or 10 years? Because clearly the pandemic meant that certain things were permanently changed. And what do you think towing guys are not seeing? Like, what do you think towers need to do to be prepared for the next 5, 10 years? And what are those things to prepare for? Like, if you could just, kind of give me like your top three or whatever.
Okay. Well, I emphasize training. Okay. Training. And guess what? We have evolving into our automotive structure are what? Electric vehicles.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I
We
was gonna,
discuss
yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah.
We talk to fire departments, and some fire departments are like, yeah, let it burn. Other fire departments is like, hey, we'll pour water on it. Other fire departments, nobody has a policy, and all that's evolving. Now, storage. We also have a vehicle storage facility. How do you store a wrecked EV? So that's
Right.
training and then storage. So
Yeah, and
there's a
for
lot,
those
lot of stuff.
so sorry to interrupt you, Tim. I was just gonna
No,
say
no
for the
problem.
people listening, you know, Tim just hit the nail on the head. This is not just about as it relates to electric vehicles, the considerations towers need to make is, for example, Tim here has I believe you refer to it as a VSF, Tim, a vehicle
Yes,
storage
yes,
facility. So
yes.
if you're operating a vehicle storage facility and you are storing a wrecked electric vehicle, obviously the likelihood that it's going to catch fire after the fact is increased because it's a wrecked vehicle. Is your
Mhm.
facility equipped to deal with that? I want to point people who are listening to an episode we did earlier in our life cycle from a company called Firebox, which makes
Yes.
a storage containment device for
Hmm.
an electric vehicle, and it can mitigate the really bad effects of a fire. But that's a good point you bring up, Tim. But besides electric vehicles, I mean, we've talked about that quite a bit. Um, what other things do you see happening in the future? Do you see more consolidation? Do you see more larger towers buying smaller towers, et cetera?
Yes. Over the I get the pleasure and the conversation from many towers around the country, either by going to different trade shows, to tow shows, or just being on the different social media. In this past week, I've talked to people from South Florida, California, Vegas, Wyoming, Carolinas, a bunch of guys in Oklahoma. So there's a whole lot of craziness going on, and there's a lot of big corporations buying up other smaller businesses. You know,
Okay.
in our tech industry, in towing, there's a few corporations buying all the tech. And there's a few corporations buying up other tow companies in it's regional. So consolidation has to happen. Education, the price of tow trucks is going through the roof. There's a whole lot of struggles we have in the future. And, we didn't even touch base on drug tests. Have we touched base on drug tests? You
No, we
know,
haven't.
that's another dilemma. Years ago, it was, one or two out of 10 people would, you have to worry about taking a drug test.
Yeah,
Now it's like a concern with everybody. And in Texas, we have to do a pre-employment drug test, and
correct.
then we
Yeah,
do a yearly random.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I'm thinking the pharmaceutical industry needs to make a better uh, marijuana test. You know,
Yeah,
because there's guys out there that party on Friday night and Saturday that don't work. But
yeah.
guess what? If a random person runs into them on Monday, we got an issue. You know.
I
So and
No, that's a good point you brought up, Tim. I am going to somewhat preserve some information on that because I'd like to have a future
Okay,
guest discuss that. But I don't want to leave you without
edit. What are you gonna
content.
edit? Edit. You're gonna edit that out.
No, 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 not at all. No, but I do have a comment on that I wish
Okay.
that I hope I should say that towers wise up to, and that is, for states that are legalizing cannabis for, let's say, recreational or medicinal use,
Mhm.
our industry, and I've had discussions with our state towing association or attempted to have discussions surrounding this. It remains to be seen how much impact they could have as it relates to changing this. But as states across the country legalize cannabis for either medical or recreational use, it's going to remain until there's federal intervention, I should say. It's going to
Mhm.
remain federally illegal. And that
Yes.
poses a really big problem for the transportation industry because, as you mentioned,
Huge.
there are guys who, I'm just going to use Colorado as an example, where they have a legal
Mhm.
cannabis industry. It's actually a thriving cannabis industry. And there are going to be let's just call it potential employees that recreationally use cannabis. And most of them probably use it in a responsible way, similar to most people that use alcohol. Most people use alcohol in a
Yes.
responsible way. They don't operate a motor vehicle, etc. The problem is going to be, as it relates to drug testing, who has you know, who is going to say what they can use? If the federal government is controlling the results of these tests, then this is going to pose a big problem to our potential workforce, Tim. I mean, I think you and I can agree on that. And it's
Yes.
going to
Huge problem. Huge.
limit the pool of people that we can hire. And I want to elaborate on that in a future discussion because I'd like to get somebody from that field who can kind of chime in because I think you and I both know that our interest is not in what somebody does when they're not at work. It's are they 100% focused? Are they sober at work? Are they well rested? We want them to be safe behind the wheel for not only for our own benefit, but for the safety of everybody else out there, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I would love to not just learn, but also hear from somebody who's actually in that space at some point. Like, hey, we have this technology that can detect cannabis use in real time. Because obviously that's what you and I care about, right? Is like, how
Hmm.
is their state of mind at work? Are they safe? As opposed to some bureaucrat saying, well, they failed a cannabis test. Well, who cares? That was 3 weeks ago the guy used it. He's at work. He's not using it now. But there's a lot of hoops to jump through there, just like you and I discussed. So, um,
Yes.
I really appreciate this conversation, Tim. I've taken quite a bit of your valuable time, and I know
It's okay.
you and I are both busy. So I did want to, kind of leave it at that with a reminder. This is not for you, Tim, but for those of you out there who are either thinking about getting into this profession or are in this profession, I did want to remind everyone, if you aren't willing to know, don't toe. I can't be any more
Mhm.
clear about it than that. Tim, thanks again, man. I really appreciate this talk. Maybe in the future we will do this again as time permits.
Yeah, definitely. Enjoy talking to you. We always have great conversations, and I want to share with you these podcasts and this communication we have. You're on the left coast. I'm in the central coast and the east coast. We talk. We all need to be communicating and have a conversation with each other to
Right.
make our whole industry better.
No
You know,
doubt. No doubt.
and
The
if
faster this information gets out there, the better it is for everybody.
yes, sir,
So I
for
hope
sure. I
everybody
appreciate.
keeps tuning in. You guys hear me, don't you?
Yeah, and I appreciate you what you do, and I appreciate
Thanks.
your people. They're good people. The tech is good, and I can't wait to see the further developments you guys work through.
You have a looming product update coming soon. I won't spoil it because I'm getting stared at by one of the big guys. So
Uh-huh.
I'll share it with you
Yeah,
as soon as we get it.
I hope so.
Thanks, Tim. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
sir.